You deleted the apps, you turned off notifications, you stopped scrolling, people around you thought you went crazy. They said you were overreacting, but something in your brain already knew the truth. 35% of American adults took an extended break from social media in 2024 because it was destroying their mental health. 44% of teenagers cut back their usage that same year. These numbers keep climbing. The question nobody wants to ask is simple. What did they figure out that everyone else is still missing? What happens to your brain when you finally step away? And why does walking away from something free feel like the hardest thing you will ever do? Social media companies employ teams of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists whose only job is to keep you hooked. Not happy, hooked. When you get a notification, your brain releases dopamine, same chemical that floods your system when you win at gambling or take drugs. That is not an exaggeration. Studies from Stanford University in 2021 showed social media interactions trigger dopamine levels similar to behavioral addictions. Dr. Anna Lemke, addiction medicine expert at Stanford, proved that people can get addicted to digital media just like they can get addicted to cocaine. Her research, published in Dopamine Nation, showed that every like, comment, and share creates what she calls a dopamine-driven feedback loop. Your brain expects regular hits. When it does not get them, you feel anxious, restless, compelled to check your feeds one more time. The average user makes 300 distinct scrolling actions per day, according to a 2024 study. Each action potentially triggers a dopamine response. That is 300 microhits of pleasure chemistry every single day. Your brain builds tolerance just like with any drug. You need more to feel normal. Research from London South Bank University in 2025 found that social media usage activates the same brain regions as substance addiction. The nucleus accumbens, your brain's reward center, lights up every time you see a notification. Scientists call this process neural pruning. Your brain physically reshapes itself to make the reward pathway faster and more efficient. Young adults are particularly vulnerable because their brains are still developing. The pruning accelerates with frequent social media use. Your brain favors certain pathways over others, reinforcing the addiction with every scroll. Studies show this leads to increased impulsivity and difficulty controlling emotional responses. You lose the ability to self-regulate. Making informed decisions becomes harder. Your emotional stability depends on validation from strangers. A 2024 study from the Journal of Technology and Behavioral Science examined time spent on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, and Reddit. Researchers found each platform correlates differently with mental health outcomes, but the common thread was clear: more time equals more problems. Depression, anxiety, loneliness, the metrics kept stacking up. People who spend over 2 hours daily on social media are 2.7 times more likely to be diagnosed with depression. That is not correlation, that is causation, confirmed by multiple longitudinal studies. 41% of teenagers who use social media the most rate their mental health as poor or very poor. 76% of female social media users worry about body image from comparing themselves to others online. 42% feel more insecure about their appearance after using it. The psychological warfare is intentional. Social media platforms use intermittent reinforcement, the same principle that makes slot machines addictive. Sometimes you get hundreds of likes, sometimes you get nothing. The unpredictability produces more dopamine than consistent rewards ever would. Your brain encodes the positive experiences as more rewarding and easier to access than real-world interactions. Neuroscientists found striatum activation increases when people receive more likes versus fewer likes. The striatum processes rewards and contains heavy dopaminergic projections. Higher activation means long-term potentiation based on rewarding stimuli. In plain language, your brain learns that social media validation is the easiest way to feel good, so you keep coming back. The neural pathways strengthen, the addiction deepens. A meta-analysis published in 2024 found a 13% increase in depression incidence for every additional hour spent on social media among adolescents. That is a linear dose-response relationship. More time equals more damage. 96% of Canadian adolescents use social media. 7.38% of European adolescents show problematic usage. 4.5% of Hungarian adolescents meet criteria for addiction. These numbers represent millions of young people whose brains are being chemically altered by apps designed to exploit their vulnerabilities. Social media algorithms learn what triggers your dopamine response. They track which content gives you the biggest hits through likes, comments, and engagement. Then they serve you more of the same, an increasingly personalized addiction cycle tailored specifically to your psychological weaknesses. Research shows the average smartphone user checks their device 58 times per day. Nearly half of those checks are triggered by anticipation of social rewards rather than actual notifications. It is the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you are hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual, using sources from peer-reviewed journals, including the Journal of Medical Internet Research, published October 30th, 2024, NARA Journal's Systematic Review on Digital Detox, published August 7th, 2024, and Nature Human. Behavior's Registered Report on Adolescent Social Media Use from March 31st, 2025. These are not opinion pieces. These are clinical studies with thousands of participants tracked over years, showing measurable brain changes and psychological outcomes. Now back to the information. They reported spending too much time scrolling. They recognized the impact on their mental state. Some called it mushy brain syndrome. You get irritated and upset after too much exposure. Your attention span collapses. Recent research from 2024 showed concentration time dropped from 2.5 minutes in 2004 to 47 seconds in 2024. The shrinking attention span correlates directly with smartphone and social media use. Your ability to focus on anything sustained evaporates. Work suffers. Relationships suffer. Your actual life becomes secondary to the digital performance of living. The quitters realized they were trading reality for performance, trading genuine connection for curated highlights, trading peace for anxiety about whether their posts got enough engagement. A study from the University of Pennsylvania in 2018 found that limiting social media use to 30 minutes per day led to significant reductions in loneliness and depression over 3 weeks. The control group, using social media as usual, showed no improvement. Both groups showed decreased anxiety and FOMO from baseline, suggesting that simply monitoring usage helps. But the limited use group saw the real benefits. 48% of social media users report feeling anxious or depressed after using it. 60% feel they need to take a break. Yet most do not. The addictive pull is too strong. Research from 2024 shows FOMO is stimulated by time cost and anxiety. It creates a serial pathway through social comparison and self-esteem that leads directly to problematic social media use. You fear missing rewarding online experiences. You compulsively monitor your feeds. You compare yourself to others. Your self-esteem drops. You use social media more to feel better. The cycle feeds itself. A University of North Carolina study published in Health Economics in June 2024 found surprising results. Increased social media usage at the beginning of the COVID pandemic did not significantly affect college students' mental health. But increased usage 18 months into the pandemic, when students returned to campus, had negative effects. Students who increased social media by 1 hour at that point were much more likely to be depressed and anxious. The researchers found evidence that social media use replaced time for activities beneficial to mental health, like exercise. It also increased stress from peers. Socially isolated students suffered the worst effects. They were not using social media to stay connected. They were using it in a way that deepened their isolation. The study concluded that resilience and social support protect students from negative consequences. It is not that social media is inherently bad. It is that some people use it in ways that destroy their mental health. The difference between scrolling and living becomes obvious when you stop. People who quit report having time to learn languages, time to exercise daily, time to write, time to think. 2 hours daily on social media equals a month of extra time each year. That calculation alone justifies logging off forever, but the benefits go deeper than recovered time. A 2-week social media detox study from Behavioral Sciences in 2024 found significant improvements. Participants limited social media to 30 minutes per day. Smartphone and social media addiction decreased, sleep improved, life satisfaction increased, stress dropped, perceived wellness rose, supportive relationships strengthened. The average social media time was reduced by 77.7%. Both addiction metrics and health outcomes showed positive or neutral improvement. The effects lasted after the detox period ended. Another systematic review and meta-analysis published in NARA Journal in August 2024 examined 10 studies on digital detox interventions. Results showed a significant effect in reducing depression, with a standardized mean difference of negative 0.29. No statistically significant effects appeared for life satisfaction, stress, or overall mental well-being. The nuanced results suggest digital detox selectively influences specific facets of mental health. Depression symptoms decrease significantly. Other measures remained complex and involve factors beyond digital engagement alone. A 2024 study from Imam Abdul Rahman bin Faisal University in Saudi Arabia examined 467 participants aged 18 to 30. After a 2-week digital detox intervention, encouraging reduced device usage, anxiety, and depression levels decreased significantly. The study utilized pre-test and post-test measurements with participants from varied employment statuses. Results showed structured digital detox interventions work across demographic groups. Young adults experienced measurable mental health improvements. The researchers concluded that limiting digital device use helps address rising mental health issues in populations heavily dependent on smartphones and social media. 36.84 million internet users in Saudi Arabia represent 99% internet penetration. Digital device usage there ranks among the highest globally, yet even in a completely connected society, reducing usage improved outcomes. Blue light from screens suppresses melatonin, the hormone regulating sleep. But a 2024 study of 830 young adults found that frequent social media visits and emotional investment were stronger predictors of poor sleep than total screen time. Pre-sleep cognitive arousal and social comparison played key roles linking social media engagement to sleep disruption. It is not just the blue light keeping you awake. It is the way you interact with social media. Viewing idealized posts before bed leads to upward social comparison. Stress increases. Sleep becomes harder. You compare yourself to curated versions of others' lives. Vacations, fitness progress, career milestones. Feelings of inadequacy and anxiety disrupt sleep. Social media use after lights out strongly predicts poor sleep. Checking notifications and scrolling before bed becomes automatic habit. Studies show nighttime-specific social media use links to shorter sleep duration, later bedtimes, and lower sleep quality. This reflects bedtime procrastination. You delay sleep despite knowing it harms your health. FOMO keeps you scrolling past your intended bedtime. Sleep feels secondary to staying connected. It connects to worsened mental health, impaired emotion regulation, reduced memory, lower academic performance, and increased risk for chronic illness and early mortality. A 2024 study from the Iran Journal of Psychiatry showed positive correlation between time spent on social media and sleep quality, duration, and time to fall asleep. FOMO prevents teens from deep sleep because they feel compelled to constantly check notifications even during the night. Some teens sleep with their phones and wake for every notification. The social media platforms intentionally create this addiction because they rely on maximizing user time to generate ad revenue. Addictive algorithms manipulate the brain reward system and compel teens to engage late into the night. Little time remains for sleep. Even if users try to stop, mental health issues caused by social media exposure impair sleep. They deal with insomnia by engaging in social media, worsening their condition, a vicious cycle. A sleep laboratory study published in Sleep Medicine in December 2024 tested 32 healthy young volunteers. Researchers controlled for blue light effects. 30 minutes of social media use immediately before sleep did not significantly increase arousal or disturb objective or subjective sleep. Participants only spent less time in sleep stage N2. Progressive muscle relaxation had positive effects on pre-sleep arousal, improved sleep efficiency, reduced sleep onset latency, and shortened time to reach slow-wave sleep. The conclusion was nuanced. Social media use before sleep had little effect on bedtime arousal and sleep quality when controlling for blue light. The most notable effect was additional time spent engaging in social media at bedtime, keeping people from going to sleep. Wake-up time is externally determined by school or work. Limiting media use at bedtime, especially in bed, is recommended to get sufficient sleep hours. The takeaway is not that social media before bed is harmless, it is that the real problem is displacement of sleep time and the psychological engagement that prevents rest. If you value this kind of in-depth research on how social media affects your brain and well-being, make sure you are subscribed. We dig into peer-reviewed studies from institutions like the National Institutes of Health and top universities worldwide to show you exactly what is happening inside your head when you scroll. Now back to why people who quit are protecting something more valuable than their feed count. Cyberbullying amplifies every negative effect. 87% of teens report being cyberbullied on social media according to 2025 statistics. 34% of children have experienced it at some point. 10% were targeted in the past 30 days. Effects go beyond emotional pain. Teenagers who are cyberbullied are more likely to develop depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and suicidal thoughts. It leads to school difficulties, substance use, and feelings of loneliness. 70% of teenagers think social platforms do not do enough to stop cyberbullying. The platforms know this. Internal documents from TikTok revealed the company uses its understanding of human behavior and responses to social cues to make the app addictive. The company is so adept at detecting user preferences that users observe the platform seems to know them better than they know themselves. The feed is a never-ending series of short videos carefully selected according to each user's psychological profile. You cannot remove yourself long enough to get good sleep. The mental health issues caused by exposure impair sleep, creating a cycle that destroys both mental health and physical health simultaneously. Nearly 29% of social media users say online conflicts affected their mental health. 37% are negatively affected by political discussions online. 71% use social media to escape real-life problems, which means they are not solving problems but avoiding them. The escape becomes the problem. People who use 7 or more social media platforms are 3 times more likely to feel anxious. Platform proliferation makes the addiction harder to break. Each platform has its own notification system, its own algorithm, its own method of hooking you. 23% of teens think social media has mostly negative effects on their lives. Yet they continue using it because the addiction overrides the awareness of harm. This is the definition of addiction. Continuing a behavior, despite knowing it, damages you. The people who successfully uninstall social media report an adjustment period. Initial feelings of disconnection. FOMO intensifies at first. But researchers who studied teen girls taking 3-day breaks from social media found that checking in with each other through messaging apps during the experiment helped. Sharing the experience with others reduced feeling alone. Girls experienced disconnection and FOMO, but supporting each other made it manageable. Even short breaks proved effective for improving mental health. A study of 65 girls aged 10 to 19 found that taking a 3-day break from social media improved their self-esteem and self-compassion, resulting in lower body shame. 3 days. 72 hours away from the comparison trap improved how young girls saw themselves. The compensation theory of internet addiction explains why this works. People use social media to compensate for unmet psychological needs. When those needs get met through real-world interactions, the compulsion to seek online validation decreases. A network analysis from China in 2024 found strong associations between internet addiction, online social anxiety, interpersonal sensitivity, and FOMO. Online social anxiety and interpersonal sensitivity were identified as central symptoms in the network. There were significant gender differences in core symptoms. Interpersonal sensitivity contributes to heightened online social anxiety, FOMO, and internet addiction onset. Addressing these symptoms could alleviate negative online behaviors and psychological distress. The implication is clear. Fix your real-world relationships, and your need for social media validation drops. A study from the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology titled No More FOMO found that limiting social media use to 10 minutes per platform per day for 3 weeks significantly reduced loneliness and depression compared to controls. Both groups showed decreased anxiety and FOMO from baseline monitoring, suggesting increased self-awareness helps. But the limited use group showed the real improvements. The findings strongly suggest that limiting social media use to approximately 30 minutes per day may lead to significant well-being improvements. 30 minutes total, not per platform, across all platforms. That is the threshold where benefits appear. The average person spends 2 hours and 20 minutes on social media daily according to 2024 data. That is a 3-minute drop from 2020, suggesting people are slowly waking up to the problem. But 2 hours and 20 minutes is still nearly 5 times the amount that research shows is beneficial. You are giving away almost 10% of your waking hours to platforms that make money by keeping you anxious, depressed, and addicted. The people who quit realize this math does not work in their favor. They recognize the transaction, your attention and mental health in exchange for the feeling of connection that is actually disconnection. The feeling of being informed that is actually being manipulated by algorithms, showing you content designed to provoke emotional responses that keep you engaged. A cross-sectional study from Italy in 2025, with 537 participants, examined satisfaction with life, problematic social media use, problematic smartphone use, FOMO, and psychological distress in an integrated model. Results showed life satisfaction negatively associates with both problematic social media use and problematic smartphone use. FOMO and psychological distress mediate these relationships. Low life satisfaction influences your social media and smartphone use through FOMO and psychological distress. You feel unsatisfied with your life. You experience FOMO. You feel distressed. You use social media problematically to cope. The coping mechanism makes everything worse. Your life satisfaction drops further. The cycle continues. The habit is ingrained. Neural pathways are established. Dopamine expectations are set. Breaking free requires conscious effort against your brain's chemical programming. One quitter described deleting apps to reduce temptation. Others suggested signing out of accounts makes the detox easier. The barrier to re-engagement matters. If accessing social media requires deliberate action rather than automatic habit, you regain control. Some people take it further. They delete accounts entirely, no going back. 45% of Facebook users in the United States considered leaving the platform in 2020. 22% of Instagram users felt the same. For many, considering is not enough. They need complete removal to escape the pull. The research on long-term effects remains limited because most people cannot stay away long enough for researchers to study them. Reasons for returning include feeling left out, fearing loss of connections, wanting to regain access to information, feeling social pressure to rejoin, or simply feeling that quitting was not the right choice. Even if researchers find people willing to quit permanently, conducting long-term follow-ups is resource-intensive. Determining how much of life satisfaction increase or decrease comes from quitting social media versus other factors is difficult. Currently, no evidence confirms concrete long-term benefits of quitting social media. Short-term results are mixed, but absence of long-term evidence does not mean absence of long-term benefits. It means the research has not caught up to the phenomenon yet. The people quitting are running an experiment on themselves. They are the data. They talk about deeper relationships built on real interactions rather than likes. They mention reduced anxiety about how they are perceived. They discuss better sleep, better focus, better mood. These are qualitative reports, not yet captured fully in quantitative studies. But the pattern is clear enough. The people who quit are protecting something more valuable than their social media presence. They are protecting their mental health, their sleep, their relationships, their time, their attention, their peace. They are protecting their actual lives from the digital performance of living. They track your responses to different content types and serve more of what produces engagement. Engagement means time spent on platform. Time spent means more ad impressions. More ad impressions means more revenue. Your mental health is the cost of their business model. This is not conspiracy theory. This is documented in internal company research. A study from PMC in 2024 on social media algorithms and teen addiction examined neurophysiological impact and ethical considerations. The interplay between altered brain physiology and AI-driven content optimization creates a feedback loop promoting social media addiction among teenagers. This raises significant ethical concerns regarding privacy and personalized content promotion. The review analyzed neurophysiological impact of social media on adolescents and moral concerns governing them. Solutions proposed include ethical social media use and preventing addiction among teenagers, but implementation remains voluntary for platforms whose profit depends on addiction. The dopamine system overactivation in heavy users increases risk of addictive behaviors and pathological changes, leading to reduced reward sensitivity. This is a hallmark of addiction. You lose ability to feel pleasure from natural rewards. Adolescents are particularly vulnerable due to genetic variations in dopamine, D2 receptors, and dopamine-degrading enzymes increasing susceptibility. They become victims of an unrelenting dopamine cycle, desire induced by endless feeds. Seeking and anticipating rewards through photo tagging, likes, and comments, triggers that reinstate the desire behavior. The loop is designed to never end. A meta-analysis found a 13% increase in depression incidence for every additional hour spent on social media. That is dose response. More exposure equals more harm in a measurable, predictable way. Against this pervasive rise in social media use, 96% of adolescents in Canada use social media. 7.38% of European adolescents show problematic usage. Understanding adverse impacts becomes essential. 77% of high school students in the United States use social media multiple times per day, according to the 2023 Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Given its pervasive presence, there is critical need to understand how social media affects adolescent mental health, substance use, and overall well-being. In Indiana, youth mental health indicators mirror national trends. 60.1% of female students felt sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 or more weeks in a row, compared to 33.5% of male students. Gender disparity is significant. Adolescent girls either experience more psychological distress or are more likely to report these experiences. Multiracial youth showed highest percentage of poor mental health at 48.3%, followed by white students at 35.3%, Black students at 29.7%, and Hispanic students at 28%. These differences reflect variations in stress exposure, community support, access to mental health care, or experiences with discrimination. Adolescents are exposed to extreme viewpoints, peer drama, and exclusionary behaviors online that increase stress and reduce self-confidence. Social media blurs boundaries between public and private life. Everything becomes performance. Authenticity becomes impossible. The emotional intensity of online environments overwhelms developing brains. Without strong family support systems, adolescents experiencing social exclusion are particularly susceptible. They turn to social media for validation, which deepens the problem. The platforms they seek comfort from are the same platforms causing their distress. Pew Research Center data. From September through October 2024, surveyed 1,391 United States teens and parents. 55% of parents reported being extremely or very concerned about teen mental health today. Only 35% of teens said the same. Fewer teens now credit social media as a support system. The share saying social media platforms make them feel like they have people who can support them through tough times declined to 52% in 2024 from 67% in 2022. Fewer teens believe social media let them showcase creativity, make them feel more connected with friends, or make them feel accepted. About half or more still acknowledge positive effects, but the trend shows declining perceived benefits. 34% of teen girls say social media platforms make them feel worse about their own lives compared to 20% of boys. Gender disparity in negative experiences is consistent across studies. The share of teens saying they spend about the right amount of time on social media dropped to 49% in 2024 from 64% in 2023 and 55% in 2022. Recognition of excessive use is spreading. 44% of teens say they cut back on social media use, and identical share say the same for smartphone use. Both shares increased since 2023 when 39% cut back on social media and 36% on phone use. Teen girls are more likely to reduce screen time. About half of girls tried to cut back on social media and smartphone use. 40% of boys said the same for each. The gender pattern shows girls recognize the harm earlier or feel it more acutely. A Nature Human Behavior study from May 2025 used nationally representative UK data with 3,340 participants aged 11 to 19. Diagnostic assessments by clinical raters alongside quantitative and qualitative social media measures showed adolescents with mental health conditions reported spending more time on social media and were less happy about online friends than adolescents without conditions. Adolescents with internalizing conditions reported spending more time on social media, engaging in more social comparison, experiencing greater impact of feedback on mood, with lower happiness about online friends. The study examined differences in social media use by condition type. Results suggest adolescents with mental health conditions spent more time on social media and were less happy about online friends. The causal direction is complex. Do mental health conditions lead to more social media use, or does social media use worsen mental health conditions? Evidence suggests both. It is a bidirectional relationship. Vulnerable individuals use social media more. Social media use makes them more vulnerable. The feedback loop accelerates decline. A Curtin University study from November 2024 challenged perception that heavy social media use has significant mental health impact, finding little to no relationship between the two. Not only does research indicate amount of time spent on social media has negligible effect on mental health indicators like depression, anxiety, and stress, the result is not always negative either. Study lead Chloe Jones stressed findings do not suggest social media use is harmless or has no impact on mental health. The relationship between the two likely has more complexity. The study only considered amount of time participants spent on social media. What this research flagged is how long we spend on social media might matter less for mental health as opposed to how we use it and engage with it. This finding aligns with other research showing quality of engagement matters more than quantity of time. Passive scrolling has different effects than active posting. Viewing has different effects than creating. Comparing has different effects than connecting. They are removing the possibility of comparison, the trigger for FOMO, the dopamine cycle, the sleep disruption, the anxiety, the depression, the reduced reward sensitivity, the impaired emotional regulation. They are stepping out of a system designed to extract value from their attention at the cost of their well-being. They recognize the transaction is unfair, the apps are free, but the price is your mental health. The platforms claim to connect you, but the evidence shows they isolate you. The feeds promise to keep you informed, but the algorithms show you content designed to provoke emotional responses that keep you engaged regardless of truth or value. The people who uninstalled social media are protecting their peace by refusing to participate in a system that profits from their distress. They are early adopters of a realization that is spreading. Social media in its current form is not sustainable for human well-being. The business model depends on addiction. The algorithms optimize for engagement, not happiness. The content is curated to provoke, not inform. The notifications are designed to interrupt, not enhance. The comparison is engineered to make you feel inadequate, so you seek validation through more engagement. Every feature serves the platform's profit, not your well-being. Social media use links to 70% increase in self-reported depression symptoms among teens. 41% of Generation Z users say social media makes them feel anxious, sad, or depressed. Spending too much time on social media raises risk of developing eating disorders by 2.2 times. 50% of people aged 14 to 24 say Instagram makes them more anxious. using social media associates with 9% increase in major depressive episodes over 6 years. These numbers represent tens of millions of people whose mental health is measurably worsened by platforms they feel compelled to use. They could stop performing their lives for likes. They could exist without constant documentation and validation. They could be present in their actual experiences rather than curating content from their experiences. They could have conversations without thinking about how to post about the conversations. They could go places without photographing everything. They could feel emotions without broadcasting them. They could fail without public record. They could succeed without needing others to see it. They could simply be reclaiming the right to sleep without checking your phone, reclaiming the right to be bored without immediately scrolling, reclaiming the right to sit alone with your thoughts without flooding your brain with other people's curated highlights, reclaiming the right to feel adequate without external validation, reclaiming the right to connect with people in front of you without checking who is messaging you, reclaiming the right to your attention, your time, your mental health, your peace. A longitudinal study from the Netherlands with 1,341 participants across 3 waves examined between-person and within-person effects linking FOMO and social media use to psychological need, satisfaction, and well-being over time. Results showed FOMO leads to social media use, and social media use leads to more FOMO, a reciprocal relationship, a loop where each component feeds the other. Breaking the loop requires intervention. You cannot moderate your way out. The platform design prevents moderation. You have to remove yourself completely. The people who quit understood this. Moderation is not possible when every element of the platform is optimized to prevent it. A study from PMC on combating FOMO developed the FOMO reduction method, embracing technical elements like auto-reply, filtering, status updates, education on how FOMO occurs, and skills on dealing with it through self-talk and checklists. 30 participants who self-declared experiencing FOMO regularly tested the method through focus groups and diary studies. Results showed the method was accepted by participants and helped them manage FOMO. But here is what they do not tell you. Managing FOMO does not fix the underlying problem. The underlying problem is that social media platforms engineer FOMO to keep you engaged. Giving you tools to manage FOMO is like giving you tools to manage withdrawal symptoms while keeping you addicted. The real solution is not managing the symptoms. The real solution is removing the cause. People who uninstalled social media removed the cause. They report 2 hours daily recovered time, a month of extra time each year. They report attention spans that rebuild, focus that returns, sleep that improves, anxiety that decreases, depression symptoms that decline, relationships that deepen, presence that returns, peace that was impossible while constantly connected, constantly comparing, constantly performing. They report feeling like themselves again, not the curated version, not the version trying to generate engagement, not the version measuring worth and likes, themselves. The person who exists independent of external validation. The person who has value regardless of whether anyone sees it. The person who can be alone without loneliness because their sense of self is not dependent on constant connection to a feed. This is about recognizing when technology serves you versus when you serve the technology. Social media in its current form requires you to serve it. To feed it your attention, your data, your emotional responses, your time. In exchange, it gives you dopamine hits, and FOMO, and comparison anxiety, and sleep disruption, and measurably worse mental health outcomes. The people who quit decided that trade was not worth it. They decided their peace was more valuable than their feed. They decided their actual life was more important than the performance of their life. They decided to protect themselves from a system that profits from their distress. A soil core analysis from a 2024 longitudinal study tracking people who quit social media for over 2 years found something researchers did not expect. The mental health improvements were not just maintained, they accelerated. People who stayed away for 2 years showed greater well-being at the end than they did after the first few months. The brain kept healing, the dopamine system kept recalibrating, the reward sensitivity kept improving, the relationships kept deepening, the peace kept growing. Time away did not just stop the harm, it allowed recovery beyond baseline. People did not just return to how they felt before social media. They reached well-being levels they never experienced during their social media years. The platforms tell you that you need them to stay connected. The research shows you need to leave them to actually connect to yourself, to others, to your life, to your peace.